Carmela, just so you know, Jim is going to be late.
Of course he is. He's on. No, I won't say it.
We've already said it.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. It's going to be a long night. If anyone needs, to hit the restroom or something, I get it. Just let us know. Let me know. Trying to get the lighting in here. Okay. All right. Ken, I like your background, except unfortunately, this is where I have to go. All right, Mara, are we good to go?
Yeah, you're all set.
Okay. So we're only missing Jim. Okay. Thank you for joining. I apologize, we're a few minutes late. We had a little technical difficulty and it's all my bad. This evening is a finance meeting and it is 6:10, so we're 10 minutes late, but we'll get right into this. And I would ask everyone to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, and maybe Councilmember Steele, if you don't mind, leading us in the pledge. Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, liberty and justice for all. And I goofed it, but I'm sorry.
That's okay. It's okay.
That was probably the worst ever.
Hey,
I think each of us, we all make mistakes. So I'll do a roll call. Councilmember Gully will be joining us momentarily. Councilmember Ash McPherson.
I'm here, but I just need to say it's not going to be momentarily for Councilman Gully. It might be an hour or so. He's about an hour away, he said.
Okay. Councilmember Steele.
present.
Thanks. Councilmember Cummings.
Present.
Councilmember Zaluski.
Here.
Councilmember McDermott.
Here.
Council President Mantello. We have 6 present, 1 absent. I'd like to invite everyone. We do need to approve the minutes from the last, I believe. No, we'll approve them at the regular. Presentation of the agenda this evening, folks. We have just 1 item on the agenda, and that's a very big item, and that would be the police reform and reinvention collaborative. Several weeks were put into this report, and I did ask the mayor to join us, and I just noticed that our chief has also joined us, stating that I and Councilmember Zaluski were participants on the PRCC work group, and we have before us this evening a report. We've been receiving feedback over the last couple of weeks since the report was submitted to the council. And, I must say, I think many of us, we've said it many times, yes, the governor passed an executive order challenging communities to pass some type of police reform plan by April 1st. However, the city of Troy began this initiative before the working group was put together. And I was a part of several neighborhood meetings back in the summer, which began after we saw quite a bit of gun violence on our street. Obviously, the death of George Floyd and the many rallies and protests all throughout our nation, but here in our backyard in the city of Troy. And, saying that I learned a lot over the last year, and specifically during these working group sessions. My commitment is to continue listening, to continue moving forward. As I've stated, in my opinion, this is only my opinion, this is a work plan. This is a beginning step. Khalil Jameson and Fred has joined our effort to improve the police department, to make our police department more transparent. But more importantly, what I heard were replacing, or I should say, taking down barriers, building trust, and trying to ensure that our police are working hand in hand with our community and that we're one Troy. I think that this report begins those steps. And as I said, this is not the end, this is the beginning, and this is only my opinion. I asked the mayor to maybe brief us, if he doesn't mind, kind of where we were, the task force, and where we are today. And if he doesn't mind, I would love for the mayor to say a few words, and then we'll go right into the public forum, and then we'll talk more about the report, if that's okay. Mayor?
Thank you, Council President and members of the council. Can you hear me okay? Okay, great. So last summer, by way of an executive order, Governor Cuomo required local governments across the state to undertake a review of their policing operations with an eye to reforming and reinventing their police departments. And while the plan before you this evening is in response to that executive order, much of the work, as the Council President has already mentioned, much of the work began far earlier. And if we can really impress one point tonight, that is that the work will continue well beyond the submission of this report to New York State. Chief Owens and his leadership team are committed to making changes to develop greater transparency, greater accountability, and greater trust, all in a bid to enhance community-centered policing. I'd like to thank the steering committee that received and discussed the community input. They gave many hours, both in meetings and in informal discussions with me and others, to help synthesize those comments. I'd like to thank the many community members who took time to develop and share their thoughts with the steering committee. It's obvious they have great passion for our community. The recommendations included in the report, as has been stressed throughout, are only the beginning. Some are easy and quick. Some require additional framing. Some require new partnerships, and many require the difficult search for resources. As we move forward, I'm sure that we will learn more. We'll learn what's working, what's not working, and I'm sure we'll develop better ideas to achieve the ends that we are pursuing. We have the mechanism in place to be nimble to make those adjustments on the fly. This document is not perfect, but moving forward with an open mind, we will make it more so. We all want the same thing. We all want a safe and welcoming community for all. I submit this to the council's consideration as our report to the state, with the understanding that our work will continue well into the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I do apologize just for the delay, and I apologize. I'm getting myself still together here, technology. But thank you so much, Mayor. And we have so many folks who have signed up this evening. I do want to ask folks who are listening, because I so far have received 2 texts. If you don't see the registration in your email, look in your spam, and hopefully the registration's there. If it isn't, please text or email one of your council members or me. We'll make sure that we get you onto the agenda. We want to hear from all of you. Process real quick and housekeeping. The first thing, I did just want to ask for decorum this evening. I know so many folks are so passionate about not just the report, but about this issue, about many issues that are in the forefront in our city. So I would just ask, I'm not going to read the rules. What I am going to ask is that folks respect each other. I think that the council, we tend to be very professional with each other, and I applaud all of you for that. I'm asking the public to please do the same. No personal attacks, and just respect your council colleagues, the mayor, etc. Please don't get personal, derogatory remarks, reflections of integrity, abusive comments, statements, motives, personalities. I cannot tolerate that, and I won't tolerate that this evening. So thank you. Secondly, where do we go from here? Some people have asked, if it passes this evening, it will be on the agenda for next Thursday. So if you didn't sign up this evening, you can sign up for next Thursday's regular meeting. There will be a comment period. If it doesn't pass, we'll have to regroup. I do want folks to know, if a plan is not submitted to the executive, that being the state executive, by April 1st, or I should say, if we don't pass it by April 1st and it's submitted and not submitted, we do jeopardize losing state funding. And in the governor's 30-day amendments, he has put in that the Attorney General would actually put a monitor in charge of the city to oversee various police department duties, etc. So I don't think any of us want that to happen, but at the same time, we want the plan to be, in my eyes, the beginning of moving forward. So I thank everyone that signed up, and we'll go into the public comment period, and you will all each have 5 minutes per the rules. And Mara, please give us our first speaker, please.
Okay, so I'm gonna just read off the names in order 3 at a time so people can kind of know where they are. And I'm just going through the list in order as how it appears on my sheet here. So the first 3 people that I have who are signed up who have joined the meeting are Abby Kinchy, Angela Beeler, and Carolyn McAvoy. So Abby Kinchy will be first.
Thank you, Mara. And we will wait. Abby, thank you for joining us. And you have 5 minutes, and thank you.
Great, thanks. I'm not sure you can, I don't know if you see or hear me here. Oh, I think I can start my video. So, hi, I wasn't expecting to be the first person here this evening, but I'm happy to speak. So, listen, I'm so disappointed with this report, but I have to say that I'm not surprised. I've been coming to meetings like this for more than 10 years, responding to incidents involving the police in Troy, where community members have come out, shared their experiences, shared their fears, shared the abuse that they've experienced, and people nod, they smile, and then absolutely nothing changes. So, this is just a continuation of what we have seen for years and years. And that's just, my 10 years here, and people who've lived here longer, I'm sure, have experienced this for many more years than that. I think that the leaders of this city have continuously refused to acknowledge the racial disparities in our criminal justice system, in Troy, in the state, and nationally, right? And we can see this in the very slow start in responding to the executive order. It demonstrated disregard for the importance of this issue in our city. And then the refusal to actually refer to racism and racial injustice in the report just further conveys the extent of the denial of this serious issue. And it really does seem like denial to me. Councilwoman Montello and Mayor Madden just said that this is just a start, right? Okay, I accept that. but it's a wholly inadequate starting point. If you can't own up to the real problems in this city, you're just not ready to do the work that this requires. There is work that is desperately needed in this city to achieve racial justice and to deal with the violence and oppression that people are experiencing at the hand of police. And this is not the right starting point. You have to reject this report and start over. And honestly, if this happens, like if this report doesn't get approved, you said that the Attorney General will bring in external observers or mediators. I think we need that, right? If the city leaders clearly aren't able to do this crucial work, then I think we actually do need external intervention. And I'm sorry to say that will probably be pretty disruptive in this city, but something has to change. So thank you for listening, and I look forward to hearing everybody else's comments this evening.
Thank you, Abby. I do want to clarify that proposal in terms of the monitor is the governor's executive proposal. The Senate and the Assembly have put out their one-house budgets and reject that piece of the governor's executive proposal. We'll see where that ends up when the state budget passes. But I have to at least, throw it out there so folks are aware of that. So thank you very much for your comments. Thank you. Okay, Mara.
Okay, the next person to speak is Angela Beeler. Oh, I'm sorry, I think
No problem. Hi, Angela. You are joining the City Council Finance meeting. Thank you. You have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for taking my comments tonight. I just want to say that a few points. I think that it is really unfortunate that it took over 8 months for the city to break silence on how they were going to respond to the executive order. You can say that you were engaged in activities before that, but part of what this executive order is asking for is engagement with the community, with residents, with stakeholders. And a part of that is letting people in on that process and creating a process that people can participate in. I feel like it took over 8 months to break that silence. This was convened for February. There were only 9 meetings. So there was a lot of work done to keep the public of Troy out of the conversation. You could not find the meetings on the city council calendars. You could not find them on anything other than the PRRC page. It was a 2-step process to even register to be here on the Zoom. And there wasn't any accessibility made for people who have differing abilities, for people who need language translation, for people who do not have internet or computer. There are so many voices that were kept out of this process, and it felt deliberately disenfranchising, both from that first 8 months and then how the meetings were held. I agree with the previous speaker, this is a non-start. The start is really to admitting the role of systemic racism. And the conversation around the role of systemic and structural racism in institutions like the police department have been going on for decades and decades. And I think that what this process really shows us is the lengths that particularly white people will go to not admit our role in racism and in violence and in the things that structure people's everyday lives. And so I want to say that there are so many voices here in Troy, so many voices beyond that, so many books, so many videos, so many things that could tell us about the story and the history of racism in this country and the way that it gives privilege and access and support to some and not to others. So we are not one Troy, we are many Troys that are shaped by xenophobia and by racism. I think it's striking. Today we had a speak out, and a speaker brought up how even the governor's executive order states in the first page of it, therefore, Black Lives Matter. and also named a number of people whose names need to be brought back into our consciousness again and again who have suffered at the hands of the police. And we're not doing that here in Troy. Say their names. Say Edson Thevenin. Say Demik McDonald. Christopher Johnson right now is suing the city, suing the police department, and suing Officer French over systemic racism. And yet DeWolf can still say, we do not have a racism problem in the police department. Brian Owens can say, I do not believe there's systemic racism. The thing is, these are things that have to be deliberately addressed because they live within us. They live within our interactions. They then permeate our processes, our procedures, the ways that we have fear. And if you have a gun and you have fear and you're out on the street, I think that's not represented in this report. There are things that, if we're talking about transparency and building trust, there are questions that have not been answered in terms that many people spent their time and energy giving freely, volunteering their own personal experiences of themselves and their families that I feel like were dismissed. And I felt that felt like a deep pain to dismiss people's real, genuine concerns for themselves, for their children, for their Black children. And I think that addressing things like, we don't need more information about how the police department works. We need more information in certain places, like what is the role of the police union, the role of the PBA? What is the role of insurance and protecting when police are violent and defending them in that? So to me, this is a non-start and a conversation that was started by many other people, particularly Black, Brown, Indigenous activists who risked their lives for many, many, many decades. And we are so behind on that. And so I'm offended, and I'm offended for Troy. I'm offended for my neighbors, and I just hope that we could do better. Thank you for your time.
Angela, thank you for joining us this evening. Thank you.
Okay, so the next person to speak is going to be Carolyn McAvoy. After her will be Carolyn Bardos, Cheryl Miller, and Deb Garrett. And if you noticed, my list is basically alphabetical by first name. Sorry, but that's how it came up. So just if you want to know where you're going to be on the list, that's the way it ended up. Sorry if that's a problem for anybody.
All right, it's perfectly fine. Thank you. Okay. We will wait for Carolyn McAvoy. Carolyn, thank you for joining us. You have 5 minutes. You were on with the City Council Finance Committee. Thank you.
Hello, thank you. So, hi everybody, my name's Carolyn. I'm a resident of Troy, and I love this city, and I am proud to call it my home. I don't have to live in fear of the police, but I know that there are some people in my community that do. And this problem is never going to be resolved until we give voice to the people who we are hurting and abusing. Possibly the most harmful way to respond to people who have experienced trauma is to deny their experience, to twist their words, and even to imply that they deserved what happened to them. I would like to apologize to my neighbors that the city government has failed you and that the police force continues to fail you. And I'd like to let you know that you're not alone and you are not powerless and you deserve better. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Carolyn. Thank you for joining us. Okay, Mara, next on the list, we have, last name is Bardos. Hi, Carolyn. You were on with the Troy City Council Finance Committee. Hello. We can see your name, but you were on.
Okay, here I go. I'm sorry.
There you go.
Can you hear me
Not a
now?
problem. Yes, we can hear you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for hearing my comment. My name is Carolyn Bardos. I live in downtown Troy. I'm quoting from the Governor's Executive Order number 203 that was issued in June of 2020. Part of the order states, this is the purpose, the stated purpose of the order. The order states that urgent and immediate action is needed to eliminate racial inequities in policing. That's just one part of the executive order. The other very important part that stands out to me is that the governor actually did say Black Lives Matter. African-American New Yorkers and Black New Yorkers are harmed and have always been harmed by police and white policymakers and white society in general since the beginning of the country, which started with violence, enslavement, kidnapping, and genocide of indigenous people. So here we are in Troy, 2021. This report that you were required to shape and implement does not address the needs of my neighbors in Troy who are not white. The word racism, the words racial inequity are not mentioned in this report. There's one mention, very slight. So I'm really wondering what your motivation was to actually gather this group, which by the way was mostly white people in the group. This is a very ineffective, unacceptable report, and I really, really hope that you will not approve this report and that you will go back and try again. I notice that one of your recommendations is that you're going to work with a consulting group to investigate if there's racial inequity in the Troy Police Department. Well, the real experts are the Black, Indigenous, and other non-white people in Troy who suffer at the hands of the police department in Troy. So those are your experts. Those are the people that you need to be consulting. Not a group that you don't have to hire anybody. You're not listening to the people in Troy who suffer the most at the hands of the police. You need to listen to them and go and hang your head low and go and apologize and say, we want to do something. So this report does not reflect that you intend to take any urgent and immediate action. I'm beyond disappointed, but that's not the point. It's not about me. You have to act, and this is not a report that reflects any kind of intention to act. It feels very callous to me. It feels like you want to exclude the very people that are harmed, Black and Indigenous and other people of color in Troy. Okay, so I really hope that you do not pass this report and that you will go try again. And please do the right thing. Do the right thing. Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us this evening, Carolyn. Thank you. Next on the public forum list, we have a last name Miller. Maura,
we seem to have lost Shell Miller.
okay, maybe she'll come back.
I tried promoting them and they disappeared, so if
there
they
she
pop
is.
back up, I'll try them. Oh, there you go.
Michelle Miller, thank you for joining us. You are now meeting with the City Council Finance Committee. Thank you for joining us.
Great, thank you. My name is Chell Miller. I live in downtown Troy, which is on occupied and unceded Mahakanak or Mohican land. I'm here to honor the experiences of Black and Brown community members who've spoken out and those who will not speak out for fear of retaliation. I can't speak to their experiences because I've not lived them, but I can talk about violence prevention and what keeps us safe. I'm a survivor advocate, meaning I'm a survivor of sexual violence, and I spend my days advocating for other survivors of violence at the community, state, and national levels. And this is my cat. Through my personal experiences and my work, I've come to understand we can only prevent violence and promote community safety by shifting our focus upstream. This involves a thorough understanding of systemic oppressions that shape our society and our city: racism, sexism, xenophobia, transphobia, ableism, and many more. These systems shape what is recognized as violence, who's most vulnerable to experiencing or witnessing violence, what healing and justice options are available, and how those who commit violence are treated and held accountable. They also shape who does or does not come in conflict with the law, and who gets to survive encounters with law enforcement. Any plan to address police violence must demonstrate an understanding of how these systems show up in our community. The behavior of some members of the committee, particularly the mayor and the police chief, demonstrate that they don't have an understanding of how these systems show up. During last month's listening sessions, the police chief insisted that systemic racism does not exist in Troy. That's just simply not true. The report further demonstrates that city leaders don't understand and can't recognize systemic oppression when it stares them in the face. Shifting our focus upstream also means investing in the people of Troy, investing in opportunities for our communities to thrive, like healthcare, mental health services, housing, education, food security, services related to substance abuse, and community interventions that reduce arrests and incarceration are proven strategies for promoting safe and healthy communities and preventing violence. Any plan to address police violence must include plans to invest in the community. The report does not address how the city of Troy will invest in the people of Troy and the social services we are asking for. The report does talk a lot about task forces. I do have a few things to say about that. Troy doesn't need a task force to think about whether a mental health crisis intervention team is needed. We've already asked for this during the listening sessions. Troy doesn't need a work group to think about whether diversion programs for youth are needed. Community members asked for this. We also don't need a committee to hire more Black and Brown cops. Black and Brown community members have expressed that demographic representation will not protect them. Not to mention, our police department currently faces a lawsuit alleging that Black officers have endured systemic racism within the agency. Troy doesn't need a citizen police academy to educate civilians about how the police department works. We know how it works, and we know that police departments were never designed to protect Black and Brown communities. The report demonstrates that city leadership are still not listening to the constituents, even after holding 9 listening sessions. The report talks a lot about trust, and I have some questions. How do you expect us to trust you when the committee or the city hasn't engaged in good faith efforts to gather input from the community? When the city dragged its feet for 8 months before announcing the formation of a committee with very little community input? When listening sessions were not accessible to community members who have inconsistent internet access, whose primary language is not English, or who are deaf or hard of hearing? When community members asked for investment in mental health services, and it was explicitly dismissed by the mayor. When community members will not join public listening sessions for fear of retaliation from the city of Troy and Rensselaer County. When the police department continues to predominantly target Black and Brown neighborhoods. I live in downtown Troy. I don't see them. Finally, how do you expect us to trust you when we have not seen justice or accountability for the murder of Edson Thevenin in April 2016 or the attempted murder of Demeke McDonald in 2018? Where has the city of Troy demonstrated transparency or accountability for city leadership's actions or officers' actions? We can only move at the speed of trust. If we do not pass a plan by April 1st, so be it. Let the Attorney General install a monitor if that's passed in the state budget. Let city leaders feel the weight of financial insecurity that so many community members, particularly my Black and Brown neighbors, feel. The city took its sweet time to develop a plan. Community members deserve the time it takes to make a plan that works for our city. Community members deserve to know and trust that we've been heard. We deserve better. We deserve to hear from the city an affirmation that Black lives matter and that you hear us. Thank you for your time.
Oh, sorry about that. Thank you, Chell. Thank you for joining us. We will now go to Deb Garrett, I believe. My screen, of course, is playing games.
Yes. Deb Garrett is next. Just to let people know, the next 3 after her are Elena McGrath, Hannah Vanderkolk, and Irene Soriento.
Thank you, Mara. Okay, we'll wait for Deb to join us. And I will fix my screen here. Gallery view. Okay. Hi, Deb.
Hi, everyone. How are you?
Very good. Thank you for joining us, Deb.
So I definitely had to join. I'm a little I'm a little saddened by that report. More so because it was many things that was stated over the course of all of the speakings of many groups that came out to support people that look like me in the city of Troy. It saddens me that it seems like it was something that was created like in a rush, and it feels like it was created in a rush because of funding. And I don't think that's fair. The running theme I'm noticing, and this is not just now, this has been going on for years, is trust. Black and brown people, we have a lot of trust issues when it comes to matters of systematic racism, you know, how people present things to us, all these hidden secrets. And I was expecting when this report came out that it was going to be, you know, something concrete, especially when you had so many people coming on complaining about, you know, the wait of why did everybody wait so long to present this report. So I was very shocked by, sorry, I'm in my car. I was very shocked by how it was presented. The only thing that seemed like it was like, okay, we're gonna start a PAL process. Like, that's not what we want. We honestly want people to be treated fairly. We honestly want people to feel like we're a part of this community. I don't want to feel like I'm a part of Troy when it's convenient for people to add me to somebody's systematic data resources, right? I don't want to feel like I'm a part of this community when it's needed for others. I want to feel like I'm a part of this community at all times. And Carmela, this is with no disrespect, you said something that kind of annoyed me a little bit about don't take it personal. And I gotta speak on that because I'm gonna tell you something. Anytime it comes to Black and brown people, I have to take it personal because as soon as I walk in a room, somebody's taking it personal on how they're gonna approach or respond to anything that I'm saying. So, and I'm saying this with the most utmost respect for you because I feel like me and you have a decent relationship, but I have to put that out there because when you're dealing with Black and brown people, everything is personal for us because we always judge at the moment we step someplace. I have 3 sons that I'm raising. And I want to create a space for them that they can walk anywhere in this world and feel like they're going to be treated the same, get equal, fair, you know, nothing is going to be retaliated towards them. I want them to feel like they can go someplace and nobody's looking at the color of their skin versus what they bring to the table. It is very important that we figure out how can we create a mental health hotline. Those are things that we asked for. We need that. It's bigger than just, oh, someone putting someone on meds. People need these resources. There's a lot of people that is out here suffering in silence. We need to have resources for them. And I feel like this report was created and it was just shoved aside. Another thing is that I have to mention is that the process seemed weird. Like, I was assuming that, you know, you had these sessions for people to come out and speak, and then you was going to review the report and then give people a chance to, you know, that working group to add feedback and take a little bit what everybody was saying and put it together. That's cool collaborative work. That's cool, a community coming together and creating a report that's going to reflect everybody in the community. And I don't think that was done. And I'm so saddened because there's a lot of conversations that I have with a lot of people, and I'm almost always on the defense to how, you know, I was on city council, and I feel like, you know, me having that space, I feel like sometimes I'm able to speak on the behalf of the city, and I can't do that with all the things that's taking place. I felt like you guys really let us down. That report is horrible. And this is no disrespect for anybody to have put their time in, because you obviously have to work over, you know, maybe late in the night or overtime or things like that. But it saddens me that the time that was spent wasn't done, you know, it wasn't done correctly. It was not done correctly. I think that for me, as a saving grace, I think what should happen is that because it has to be due April 1st, I think you guys need to go back and rehear those tapes and take some of the things that we had asked for, that we requested, to add to that report before sending it in. And in a business standpoint, no, I don't want the city to lose out on money, but I also, to me, the bigger picture is how I'm being treated, how my family is being treated, how the other Black and brown people in this community is being treated. We don't want to feel like it's a defense. We don't want to have to feel like it's us against you. We don't want that. We want to be treated fairly. We want to be able to do the same thing that you guys are doing. And I have to say this. If you guys notice, I have been the only Black, brown woman who have came on this call so far. So I want y'all to hear exactly what I'm saying and take heed to it, because I'm living this experience. And this is no disrespect to anybody else who else spoke. I live this experience every day. I wake up Black every single day. I don't get to change my color. The only thing I may get to change is my hair. And that's about it. My hair color. I don't get to change my face. I don't get to change my complexion. That don't go away. So I'm saying all of this in with the utmost respect for everybody, but I also want you to understand that there's things that need to happen. There's things that need to be changed in this community. And if you want to work collectively, then we have to start with this report. We have to start with this report. And another thing before I finish, we need to create a diversity officer. We need somebody who is not going to be biased. We need somebody that's going to be able to not play any favoritism to any side. We need somebody that's going to be able to speak on everyone's behalf. Because at the end of the day, when you're Black and brown, you wake up with so many obstacles already in front of you. You wake up with one, being Black and brown and being judged. You wake up with dealing with children that are, you're scared to send them outside because you don't know what's going to happen to them. We wake up in fear because people are shooting left and right, and the police are supposed to be protecting us, and we can't even feel protected in our neighborhoods. So it's that, please, if y'all don't hear anything else I said, please take a look at that report and please kind of make some corrections. Go back and review those tapes that you guys had from the YouTube. Go back and make some corrections. Thank you.
Thanks, Deb. You should know when I was talking about personal, I was talking about the rules of decorum. It had nothing to do with the report, that folks don't get personal in terms of attacks and things like that. I'm not sure if you came in the middle, but I was strictly talking about the rules of decorum.
No, I heard exactly what you said, but that's what I'm saying to you. What I'm saying is that people will take it personal, Carmela, because we don't get the change up. So I totally understand what you were saying, but they're gonna take it personal. Just it is what it is. It is what it is. Now, maybe not being disrespectful would be helpful, but they're gonna take it personal.
Yeah, it's more, don't do personal attacks on people during this meeting. That's all. Okay.
Thank you.
But thank you, Deb. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for your feedback. Thank you. Okay, Mara, next.
I read that last list and then I realized Elena McGrath and Hannah Vanderkolk are not actually on the call, so I'm going to go to Irene Soriento. Okay. After Irene is Jamie Kraus, Jerry Ford, and John Nutt, and then Luz Marquez Benbow.
Okay, Mara, we have to send Council Member Gully a new link, please.
I will tell him to check his spam folder, but I will also resend it to him.
Okay, thank you, Mara. Council Member Ash McPherson, did you have something?
No, I didn't know he texted you. I just saw the text that he said he needed a link.
Yep, thank you. Okay, so next we have Irene Soriento. Irene, thank you for joining us. You're with
Hi, can you hear me?
Council. We sure can. Thank you.
Good evening, and thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. I would like to first state that I do not support defunding the police department. The police department is already understaffed and overworked, and additional community policing is needed. With all the recent shootings in our city, it is imperative to have more officers patrolling the streets. This would also enable positive interactions between the police and the community, building trust, transparency, and mutual respect between the police and the community. Our police department also responds to too many mental health calls. These calls should be facilitated to social workers and mental health professionals so we can possibly free up police to work on community policing. Additionally, I support the continuation of funding for our school resource officers. These officers provide the necessary engagement with our youth, as well as protect our youth in schools. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us, Irene. Thank you again.
Thanks.
Okay, next we have Jamie Kraus. And Council Member Gully has joined us, so all 7 council members are present. Hello, Council Member Gully. Hi, Jamie. Thank you for joining us this evening. You're with the Troy City Council Finance Committee. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I have a lot to say. I I'm here this evening to share the remarks of my fellow Reimagine Troy Community Justice Services Work Group member, Jerry Matthews. I just want to briefly talk about the experience in the Reimagine Troy group. I want to thank council members Cummings and Steele for forming that group. And it was really a transformative experience to have a diverse group of Troy residents working together to talk about true police reform. And really, I just would like to impart to you all that how we grew as a group because of relationship building. And I feel like that is a part of the PRRC process that really was missing. It was a tightly controlled process. I feel that I want to just throw out a term that I hope everyone can look up, which is called progressive stack. And you might want to roll your eyes and think that this is like woke talk. But it's when you put marginalized voices first. And I think the Black and Brown community members on that group were not brought in. Their voices were not amplified and prioritized. And that's what we need to do. So I have more to say on that, but I'm here tonight so I want to thank them for allowing me for having that committee, and I'm going to read Jerry Matthews' statement. So Jerry Matthews lives on Peoples Avenue in Troy, New York. And Jerry brings 23 years of policing experience, which culminates in the position of, he was the chief of a 2,000 officer police department.
Jamie, we're losing you a little.
Oh, I'm sorry. I might be covering my mic. Okay, great. How about now? Is that better?
Yes, much.
Great. Jerry brings 23 years of policing experience, which culminated in being the chief of a 2,000 officer police department. He interacted with police and federal law enforcement agencies at each collegiate position. He was born in Brooklyn, but spent most of his life as a Harlem resident. It is remarkable to him that even though he led a large police department, when he was out of uniform and driving or walking the streets as a Black man, his encounters with police centered around the thought that he was a criminal rather than a cop. And these are Jerry's words that I'm sharing. The TPD must not only be open to, but embrace change. Policing initiatives that may have worked in the past are no longer relevant today. Across the country, communities are demanding police reform and change, and for a good reason. We have seen recent events here where police have acted inappropriately and with deadly consequences. Police are held to a higher standard and must be when at any moment they can be judge, jury, and executioner. In a transparent environment, the community must know and feel that the police response and action taken was justified and without racial or other bias. Having been in the role of responding to dangerous incidents, I understand the split-second life or death decisions that must be made, but I have seen all too often when unarmed people of color have been unnecessarily, severely injured or killed by police. This must stop. It stops when police, and in this case, Troy Police Department, stop denying that they too are part of this disturbing nationwide trend. As a side note, he gets that police run in while everyone else is running out. I'm thankful that you do that, but at the same time, it is what you sign up to do. The change that will most directly impact all in a positive manner is better police-community relations. Community policing within the TPD must be job one. Aside from dedicating community policing unit, every single officer on patrol should be engaged in positive, tangible, and measurable police-community interactions on a daily basis. What have I done today to enhance the standing of the TPD in the community? Every specialized unit within the TPD should be looked at and possibly scrapped if it means that more officers are assigned to community-related initiatives, including the K-9 unit and the school resource officer. Again, the mindset should be that community policing is job one. The blueprint to success is a real partnership between the police and the community. The police culture must be stripped down and discarded. It cannot continue to be us against them. The common goal must be a true, real partnership with the police and the community, coming to the table to discuss race relations, police training, police response, and diversity at all ranks. The end will result and a mutual respect as crime drops and both the police and the community win. So I think a lot of responsibility, that's the concluding Jerry's words. And I just would like to end with a lot of the responsibility in this process has been put on the community, and the responsibility lies with the chief, with the mayor, and with these systems and the people who make these decisions, not solely with the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie. Thank you for joining us this evening. Okay, next we have Jerry Ford, I believe. Good evening, Jerry.
All right, can you hear me?
We sure can. Thank you for joining us. You're with the Troy City Council Finance Committee. Thanks again.
No problem at all. So first and foremost, let me start off by saying that I am a Black man around the same age as Essence Ebony, around the same age as George Floyd, with a Black wife around the same age as Breonna Taylor, with two Black sons around the same age as Tamir Rice and Trayvon Martin, and a Black daughter around the same age as the little 9-year-old who was pepper sprayed by the police over in Syracuse. I totally reject this report. The community input was not listened to. We voiced a concern about the makeup of the PRRC group, and it was never addressed. No one even spoke on that. The report that was produced as the final report does not reflect what was asked of Governor Cuomo. He specifically wanted this report to speak about Black lives and the loss of Black lives, and that does not reflect it in the report. In order for us to see substantive change in our city, we got to be serious. The fact that this is being used as a starting point, that's pathetic. I'm just being real. It's pathetic. We had an opportunity to make change, and it was blown in the wind. It was disregarded. It wasn't put as a priority. The same way the park on 7th Ave, Geneva Pompey Park, is not being made a priority. The weather is just broken. We're trying to keep our young people engaged, and we're being told that we can't use the park because it's not finished. So what's the holdup? You have to prioritize our lives. Our lives matter. And so as you move forward in this process, all of you council individuals who are going to be voting on this, know that Troy is watching. We're watching how you place your vote to accept or to reject this report, knowing that this is not what the community needs, nor is it what the community wants. We deserve better, and we need better, and with or without your help, we will do better. Believe that.
Thank you, Jerry. Jerry, may I ask who's saying you can't use the park?
The park is still under construction or whatever. The park isn't usable, and you can do your research. You could contact the mayor and Monica, and you can get the particulars behind it. But even in regards, the park still isn't finished. And like I said, there are things that happen predominantly in our community when it's always on the back burner. There's never a priority when it comes down to our community. I would assume, which is so far off from me, that people would think that, hey, we know that the community in that area has been waiting on this park, and that every effort would have been made to make sure that the grass was done, make sure that these other things that the benches were put into place. Maybe even taking the benches that were taken out of Barker Park and putting them in that park. Who knows? There's no trash cans. There's no benches for the families to use. And once again, hold up and wait. And so I know quite sure that I know how you are, and I do respect that about you, that you'll go back and you'll look into it, and you'll be able to understand what I'm speaking of, what I'm saying, that the way that park is being put on the back burner, so is the Black lives of people here in Troy when it comes to the reimagining of the police and the interaction with our community.
Thank you, Jerry. We'll look into it ASAP. Thank you.
Welcome.
Okay, Mara, so sorry. Next on our list.
Luz Marquez Benbow. After her is Rafael Varela, Ria Drysdale, and Stephen Figueroa.
Hello, Luz Marquez. Thank you for joining us, Luz. You are with the Troy City Council Finance Committee. There you are.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Thank you for joining us, Luz.
Thank you. I wish it was under better circumstances, but hold on one second, because I lost my remarks. Hold on one second.
Take your time.
My name is Luz Marquez Bembo. I certainly want to acknowledge that we're on Mohican land before I start, and I also want to share that I'm an adult survivor of childhood sexual abuse, and for the last 20 years, I've devoted my life to ending violence against women nationally and across nationally across this country. I've been fortunate to have worked with several administrations and I can't find it. And I'm happy to be here. And I share that because I don't think it's something that you all know, and I need you to know that, because violence is not something that's new to me. It's something that I have lived firsthand from the early age of 7, and that I continue to work on every day of my life. And so what I do know about violence is that you don't end violence with violence. And by continuing to support and fund at the largest level law enforcement, not just in Troy, but across this country, what we're doing is we're taking violence to the very communities that should not be threatened or they shouldn't be living like they're in some war zone. And that is what our Black communities are living in. And so my remarks are going to address this, but for the life of me, I have no idea where they are. And so be that as it be, I'm just gonna speak to you as a mother, as a Black Puerto Rican who has chosen to live here in Troy since 1985, as someone who's come before you in the 90s and literally spoken to you in Spanish, because you continue till this very day be out of compliance with federal law that mandates that you have your meetings captioned or translated in Spanish for your large Spanish-speaking community. You're out of American with Disabilities Act compliance because you don't even provide ASL language to the deaf community. And if you're waiting for those communities to come to you, they're not going to, because you've excluded them from being able to understand anything, because you're all speaking in English. And so I want to make sure that I say that. I also want to start off by saying that much of our work for Troy for Black Lives is rooted in the beautiful and long legacy of Black, lesbian, and queer feminist politics. So what that means is we do our work at the intersections of race and other identities. And so what you may not understand what that means is, so that when Jamie's talking to you about STAC, we acknowledge that we live in a world where white supremacists lives every day. And so when you only go down the list, by the way, you know, it might seem to you like you're fair because you're going down the list in the way that we registered. Well, that's actually not fair at all. Because for many of us, in terms of our identities and our race and where we are in proximity to whiteness, and class and heterosexism and ableism is how the world receives you and how the world will see you or not see you. And so I think for many of you as white people, you're blinded by that white supremacy. And so by the time that you realize that there is a war zone on Black communities by the very system that you think will keep us safe, but in reality is only keeping you all safe as white people, we will all be dead. So this is very personal. And I'm speaking to you very sternly because this is personal. This report that you all wrote, I am urging you all, if you have any bit of consciousness, if you have any love for humanity, if you have any love and concern for the people and the residents of Troy, your constituents, you will reject it because it's an April Fool's joke on us. That is literally what you have done. This is all about performative public relations and fixing the entire cover-up of the killing of Edson Thevenin. You start your report by literally sharing with us in the 1800s around the formation of law enforcement, failing to actually understand that in the 1800s, in this very city, the most powerful abolitionist movement existed. That abolitionist movement was fighting against who? The Troy Police Department. To keep who? Black people safe. Why? Because the Troy Police Department, like all police departments in the United States, were formed to keep Black people who were enslaved from seeking their freedom. So Harriet Tubman, right here in Troy, had family in Troy, frequently came to Troy. There was an active abolitionist movement here, and you all don't even know that that exists. And I'm talking to you with fervor in my voice because I come in that spirit of Harriet Tubman to tell you that I will fight. I will fight to keep Black people safe in this city until I die. Because you all are failing our children, you're failing our families, and you don't even see it because you think everything you do is for the protection of the communities that you very much are fearful of. We've had fires in Troy, you failed them. The community itself has come together. Since June 7th, there has been a love that has been created in Troy between communities that typically didn't even talk to each other before then. For Black lives. You tell me that I'm not in sync with my community? I know I'm your name, Carmela, but I only live here. My community is Central, is Corliss Park, is Griswold Heights, and it's throughout, and it's Taylor Court, and it's throughout the very hoods that you all over police, and yet crime continues.
Luz,
We had a very young child get shot last summer.
Luz,
A very young child. I'm not done. I have 5 minutes.
Exactly.
I am not done. I have 5 minutes. If you want to respond, you have that time after me. I am not done. I have 5 minutes. I did not use my 5 minutes. We have a child that was killed in the streets. You all gave a community response that was focused on a criminal justice to go after another child. You convinced my own community to do a bounty to get that child as if that was going to end the crime, as if that was going to be justice and bring justice to anyone. You don't get justice. Black people, we don't get justice in the courtroom. We don't. As a survivor, I know that all too well. And I urge you to defund the police and begin to put funding in transformative justice processes that help the community itself deal with how do we keep ourselves safe. Because that is not cops. We have illegal evictions where our district attorney, our new district attorney now is not just, because there's a legacy of district attorneys in Troy covering up the killing of Black people, but now they're covering up landlords who are illegally evicting people in Troy during a global pandemic when there's a moratorium. the community came together to support those who are evicted. Not your services, not your nonprofits, the community, the everyday person in Troy. And y'all should be proud because I'm very proud.
Luz, I'm going to ask you to start wrapping it up, okay? Thank
You
you.
don't have to ask me. I know I have the 5 minutes and I'm going to keep my floor. And I think I need 2 minutes back because that's the second time you interrupted me.
Luz, I have
Edson Devanin, Carmela, you made it home after DWI arrest.
Luz,
And
Mara,
I'm so
please.
glad that you made it
Mara,
home.
please.
But Edson Devanin did not
Mara,
make it
I am
home.
asking you,
He
please.
did not make it home.
I
He was
asked you
killed
not to get
and he was
personal.
murdered, and the city covered it up,
Mara,
from the
please,
mayor to all of you.
please.
And so I need my
Thank you,
5 minutes, and I expect to have my 5 minutes.
Luz,
If
you have
not, I
spoken
ask
5
whoever goes
minutes. I
after
am
me
asking
to
you,
give me their
please.
time, because
Luz,
you need to hear me. That is the
Luz,
least
I am
that
asking you
you
right
can do,
now.
Carmela.
Please,
You will
thank you.
not lose any sleep from me continuing to talk to
Mara,
you, but you
Mara,
might
I'm
actually
asking you
have
right
a
now to
heart
please
and
move to the
really
next
think
speaker.
about the harm that you are doing to Black children.
Mara,
Because
I
your
am asking
youngest
you to
grew up
please
with my
move to the
youngest.
next
And
speaker.
the difference between our children is that at any moment, my child may not make it home, but
Luz,
gladly yours will. And
thank you,
I want to ensure
Luz.
that my child and all the kids that I don't know, that Jerry Ford works with, that Deb works with, because that's the other thing. You tried to pin Black leaders against each other, and the play is on you. You put forth a report that does not even say Edson Devanin's name. It doesn't say Thaddeus Faison's name, and it doesn't say Damique's name. So every time you say Edson, every time you say some national person that was killed somewhere else, you negate the reality of what's happened here in Troy, and it needs to end. It needs to end in this moment.
Thank you, Luz. Thank you. Mara,
We demand
please
that
asking
you stop killing Black people and our children. We
Mara,
demand the exploration and the creation
Mara,
of diversion
you
programs
are
away from the
and I am
criminal justice
asking you to
system
move
to
the
Black
next
communities,
speaker, please.
treatment alternatives, especially for youth, the mentally ill. And when I say the mentally ill, I'm talking about Black people with mental illness. I'm talking about, if you could serve the most marginalized of the most marginalized, then people who aren't that marginalized will get the best of services. So when you're talking about mental health issues, and when you're talking about homelessness, to organizations that struggle, Joseph's House struggles. They struggle servicing Black people. Do you know that? Your mental health institutions struggle to serve Black people. Do you know that your victim services struggle to serve Black people? So where are Black people to go? We want a disentanglement of the county government with ICE. And I know you all are city, but this is a message for all of you because I'm hoping some of them will hear. We want Troy to be a sanctuary city. We want Rensselaer County to stop allowing illegal immigrants to be housed there as if they've committed something else other than to having a good dream. The newly reformed Civilian Review Board, I told you in April 2018, I gave you, Anasha, you were there, a list of recommendations that 50% of that
Council
committee
President.
has to come for the
Ms.
most impacted communities who are
Hey,
Black
we're over
and
5
people of
minutes.
color
We've got
and
to move on.
people.
Okay.
We need you to
Luz,
pay
I am
attention and
asking
to
you to
listen.
wrap
You
it
are
up.
all voted officials and you're failing every Black.
I do not have the link here. Thank you. Mara, please, you are the clerk. I am presiding this meeting and I have no ability to preside. So
Yeah, I'm sorry. I apologize for that. I'm trying to find the list. Hold on.
Mara, that was unacceptable. I asked 5 times. I have no ability and I am
I'm sorry. I couldn't hear you. I'm sorry. I apologize. I have Rafael Durella on next.
Hi, Rafael. Thank you.
Hi, can you hear me? Yes.
You
Now,
with the Troy City Council Finance Committee. Thank you for joining.
thank you for your time. First, I would like to say, please vote no against this. It looks like a very superficial PR campaign instead of addressing any of the issues that us, the community, have brought to this committee. I also would like to make a brief follow-up on what just happened right now. It was brought up to you by a previous speaker what the stack means, that the people from the minorities should be given more time than the white people to speak. And it was an issue when we had only 3 minutes to speak, which was very short, and now 5 minutes. I find it very disrespectful to try to shut off Luz when she was speaking just because she needs a few more minutes to speak. So please think about this. Think about why do we have to be so strict today? I don't know. Do you have 1,000 people waiting to speak? That is so important to shut off someone who is an organizer of our community with so many years of experience and so much knowledge. So I think that would be something important. It wasn't planned, but I think it's something important for you to think about. The most important thing that I've seen missing from that proposal you have put out is that there has been many instances of witnesses that have testified, spoken in front of you, that they have seen police abuse. One of them, I remember, spoke about how she saw 10 police patrols while a few police officers were beating up a teenager while he tried to be on the phone with his father. And there are many of us who are afraid to speak out. So there is nothing that you are addressing about the conduct of the police. No matter how many rules we make, if you don't change the culture of the police department, but also the general culture of the city establishment, which is very long before you, even before any of you were here. In the 20 years I've been in Troy since 2003, we could read through the Troy record how this city retaliates against us continuously. From 3-job merge was famous for retaliating against businesses and employees. Twice the city hired a judge that was kicked out of the bench for taking bribes and extortion. The city hired him to represent the city. Then a Judge Bauer, got kicked out for violating the civil rights 32 times. He got hired to represent the city after the fact. And I could go on and on and on. And these are all things that we read on the newspaper. So this city has a very long history of abuse, including the corporate council that is listening here. That office for years has functioned by retaliating instead of communicating. So you have to change the culture of the Troy Police Department. Otherwise, no matter how many, you have to oversee the department. You have to have leadership. If the mayor is denying that systemic racism exists and the chief of police is denying it, there is no way that anything is going to change, even if you change something on paper. And actually, the only person here who has admitted, who answered the question was Carmela. So the mayor and the chief of police, in my opinion, they need to get out of the way, because it seems after so much time they haven't been able to even use Google. And Google, all of you please, Google dismantle racism or Google how to systemic racism and get some basic principles. It's not that difficult to spend some time trying to learn on your own a few basic things. For example, you recommend another committee to basically go out there and try to convince Black people and minorities to join the police force. But it is toxic. It is not safe for minorities and Black people to work for the police. We just had a police officer suing the city saying the Troy police has a well-established culture of racism, which we all know. And what you have to do is change that culture. You have to make that environment safe for minorities to work there. Just imagine for a minute, it would be about being discrimination against gay people. If you had an office or a company where you know there is a toxic culture against gay people, you would not recommend to go out and hire more gay people. You would recommend to fix that culture and fix that discrimination in the office before hiring gay people. So this is the same thing. You cannot try to hide the problem by hiring Black people. In itself is racist to try to hire Black people to make Troy look better when you know, because we are telling you, and Officer Johnson has told you from the inside that the Troy Police Department has a racist problem. And this has been going on for a long time. In 2010, I sued the city. And in that lawsuit, I wrote for a well-established culture of abuse.
I have about 40 seconds left, okay? If you could start wrapping it up, please.
Yes.
Thank you.
So there has been many voices that have raised this issue before. I did in writing in 2010 in a federal lawsuit saying there is a culture of abuse well established in the institutions of Troy. That's 11 years ago. And many other people. So please don't take it lightly when people are telling you they've witnessed 10 police officers beating a teenager. Do something about it.
Thank you, Raphael.
Thank you for your time.
Thank
you for your time.
Thank you, Raphael. Thank you.
Okay, can you hear me? I'm having trouble with my sound.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Next up is Rhea Drysdale.
Thank you. Rhea, I think there you are. Hello, Rhea. You're with the Troy City Council Finance Committee, and we thank you for joining us. You have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. I have my statement to read and then another for a resident of Troy who could not be here. Hello, and thank you for hearing my statement. We also just, if you're able to look at my public Facebook, had an event down by the riverfront where a number of community leaders spoke. And if you would like additional comments, you're welcome to find those because they were impassioned, honest, and incredible. And for anyone that was there, I don't know how you walk away unchanged. Sorry, allergies. Actually, it's not allergies. I started off reading the draft and I made myself cry. White tears of my own growth that I hope that you can experience and move into at whatever point you're in life. I know many of you are probably very uncomfortable, even hurting, having heard some of these comments, but they're real, they're honest, and they've come from a place of desperation from folks who've been so unheard for so many years. And so many folks have experienced so much trauma that most of us can't begin to understand. We should be thanking every Black or brown person who has shown up to beg for their life and the lives of their children. We should not be chastising them and continually ignoring their pleas. When it comes to this report, I'm reminded of a saying: a lack of planning on your part doesn't constitute an emergency on mine. The city chose not to start this process until 6 months, more than 6 months past the executive order. Excuse me. Albany finalized their recommendations the week the mayor's task force met for the first time. They submitted a 90-page report with multiple task force assigned and several opportunities for the community to comment and review that report. Their process wasn't without fault, but it was leaps and bounds beyond Troy's. Our fellow activists in this area laugh and they recognize, and I don't want to say laugh, they roll their eyes when we mention Troy and what's happening here. They know that it's a joke when we talk about racial justice in the city of Troy. Everybody knows that the city of Troy is the worst city in the capital region when it comes to racial justice. And it's a nice little hidden truth. Troy makes Albany, Saratoga, and Schenectady look progressive, and that's saying a lot. Tonight, I am asking you, because our democratic process requires me to, I am begging for your attention and hope for your courage to please edit this report. Excuse me. I know the financial ramifications of not passing it. We have had it explained to us from those that are more informed that this is not just a small dent. So with that in mind, I am not telling you to not pass it. I am telling you to edit it. You have enough time. If we can avoid a national government shutdown with less than 24 hours left, I have confidence that the city of Troy can find a way to edit what is basically an 18-page report once you remove the appendix and blank pages in a 22-point font. This report misses the mark with comments from the community. Those that were allowed and even capable of participating in this tightly controlled and highly frustrating process were not heard or seen. What's worse is it's not compliant. You took the words from Executive Order 203 and twisted them by removing the most important parts. You made the report about trust in policing based on increasing trust in policing based on transparency, accountability, and fairness. But you left off this part. The quote here is, "For the purposes of addressing the particular needs of the communities served by such police agency and promote community engagement to foster trust, fairness, and legitimacy, and to address any racial bias and disproportionate policing of communities of color." Executive Order 203 is only a 2-page document, and it mentions all of the following words dozens of times, where the city of Troy's report doesn't mention them once in a 31-page document. Discrimination, racial, racially, equity, equitable, disproportionate, racial justice. The 3 following words were not mentioned together, much less individually. Black lives matter.
Rhea, I'm just going to let you know you have about 15 seconds.
I'm going to need 60 seconds.
Sure. Yep.
Racism is only mentioned once when it is stating that discussions of bias and racism are fraught with emotion, even among people of good intention. This is often the result of people understanding terms differently. Systemic racism is what it is. You dismiss the voices of your own Black and Brown task force members by stating this. It was an insult to their energy and time, not to mention their entire livelihoods. You tokenized the folks you put on that task force, and it was disgusting to watch. When I joined the Reimagine Troy working group, your working group that you approved, so I hope you listen to me, because I have not heard I did not speak once. I let others speak, and I let my work speak for itself. The Reimagine Troy working group, we quickly recognized that our job would not be to provide actionable recommendations to the mayor's task force. It would be to convince the city that systemic racism is real. It is a problem that folks who don't look like any of you face every single day in One Troy. I'm thankful you'll be working with the Khalil Jamison group. If you have not already seen their presentation on systemic racism, it says that there are 4 stages. The first is to do nothing in a municipality or an organization. The second is to make a statement. The third is to make some changes, and the fourth is to make systemic change. The city of Troy is currently at level 1, do nothing. It is defined as not addressing issues because they seem too risky, hoping the issue will go away, with no mention of Black Lives Matter or systemic racism. This is the first recommendation in the report that you are about to pass, which is to hire this organization that is telling you right now that your report that you are about to pass does not even come close to hitting stage 2. In stage 2, it is performative activism. And right now I am begging you to go back to the drawing board and level up to that second level of performative activism, because you're not even there yet. As a fellow privileged white person, I can tell you that I have gone through all the same steps and level of discomfort, and it's painful. It's uncomfortable, it sucks, it hurts. And I have stood here. This stairwell behind me is the stairwell where Harriet Tubman helped free Charles Nally. My office is at the top of it. And I have sobbed in that stairwell because I realized how privileged and ignorant I was, having hurt Black community members that I cared for because I did not recognize their trauma or know how to deal with it. I have a lot more to say. I am available, and all I'm going to note on this is that there is a lot of work to do. Please don't say this is just a starting point. It is an insult to the people who have shown up for years leading up to this. Please don't say there is one Troy, because there is not. And when you ignore those voices, you divide the community. You have to say that we are broken and we are working to heal it together. Do not say one Troy. Please stop saying that.
Thank you, Rhea. Thank you for joining us. Next on the list, Mara.
Next is Stephen Figueroa. After Stephen is Sam Chapone, Silva Menard, and Tashika Medina.
Thank you. Hi, Steve. Thank you for joining us. You're with the Troy City Council Finance Committee. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So, you know, there was a lot covered in regards to this report, and I strongly ask that it's reviewed. Of one of my, before anything, one of my major concerns is that how the steering committee was formed. It's not transparent and it doesn't represent the community. However, the leadership expects us to build that trust, and members of the own steering committee has expressed concerns in regards to how the steering committee was made up and was completely ignored. Mind you, this is the same committee that was supposedly formed to put forward this report, and it was completely ignored. Another one was the systematic racism, and I know we all have talked about it. It was completely ignored, and it needs to be it needs to be edited on this report. We cannot ignore that. It is an issue that we're facing in our community, not only in our community, but throughout the world, and it needs to be it needs to be addressed. One of the things that wasn't really emphasized too deep is the need to prioritize in youth programs. Like Jerry explained before, there's no way that part should not have been done. We got kids dying in the streets each and every day because we don't have enough opportunities for them. And the opportunities that we have, we try to provide with zero to no funding for these kids. And predominantly in the city of Troy, the crime is being made by young people because they have nothing to do. And that's an issue that we need to address. We need to address those issues so that we can prevent them from reaching the system. We have a lot of programs that's being funded that it's diversion, and probably programs that is for young people coming out of the system. We need to invest more money into preventing them and entering the system. So that needs to be our top priority when it comes to that. And I beg that we look at the report once again and make sure that it consists of the community. Like I said, the steering committee, it consists of 4 diverse Black, all the rest was white. Concerns on and on that the steering committee should have been looked at and it should be consist of the community. It wasn't consist of the community members. It was consist of agencies that provides resources to the community. When you look at each and every one of the people that sits on the committee, they're from different agencies that provides resources, but does not deeply represents the community. And I ask that we look at that report and make sure that we're making the right decisions. I'm not sure why we started late. That's another question in regards to this report. And I just ask that we before we make that executive decision on this report, I do not agree with this final report moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you for joining us this evening. We appreciate your words. Okay, Mara, next we have Sam Chapone. Hi, Sam. Thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you, council members, for the opportunity to speak. I put some prepared remarks together to respect everybody's time. So I'll just go through these prepared remarks that I have. First, I'd like to acknowledge and thank the entire Police Reform and Reinvention Collaborative Committee and the affinity groups for working together to formulate a plan of trust for all members of the Troy community. I do have a concern, though, regarding an immediate roadblock to realizing the long-term benefits of any plan, and that's shootings. Last night, I witnessed from a personal perspective a shots fired incident in my neighborhood. While a shooting in any part of the city is concerning, when one happens close to what we think is a safe place, our home, it rattles our confidence in feeling protected. Other things that have rattled me lately are statements I hear along the lines of, the shooting wasn't random. They knew one another. Any shooting does not eliminate the potential of innocent people being involved, as we've witnessed over the past year. Also disturbing is when I attend a neighborhood meeting and a recent shooting is not part of any of the discussion. The concern here is that a shooting is accepted as an everyday occurrence we turn our backs on, hoping it will go away. That's just not right or acceptable at any level. People have differences of opinion, and these differences should definitely be respected. I'm not sure how many people in the city would disagree that the immediate and consistent problem of shootings needs every available resource to make it go away now. Just as it took some direct discussions to get to the point of a final police reform report, now's the time to directly support every effort of the Troy Police Department to make shootings go away. Enough is enough. No idea or plan will succeed when this problem exists. Let's all really be honest about that. I'm not naive, and I understand many factors play into why shootings happen. That's another discussion for a totally different time. Now is the time, despite differences, to stand with every member of the police department and our elected officials to immediately stop the violence. Shootings bring death to our hometown, and we can't allow it to happen any longer. Our city needs to count on our leaders to make a statement with a swift response to the violence that shows Troy is better than this. In closing, I would like to acknowledge on behalf of my entire family the daily efforts of the Troy Police Department, from Chief Owens to PBA President Officer Nicholas Laviano to the newest member of the department, make to keep us safe. Some people take that for granted. My family does not. Your labors do not go unnoticed. The department has always and will continue to have the support and gratitude for your hard work, professionalism, and dedication. God bless every member of the department. To the Police Reform and Reinvention Collaborative Committee and affinity groups, once again, thank you for your efforts. To the City Council, thank you for listening and for your time.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you for joining us this evening. Thank you. I believe now Mara Is there?
Silva Menard.
Hi, Silva. Thank you for joining the Tri-State Council Finance Committee. You are on and you have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Silva Menard and I am a resident of Troy. Thank you for having us tonight. First off, I need to say that Black Lives Matter. I'm here tonight with a public comment of feedback for the document called the Police Reform and Reinvention Collaborative Report, and I request that you vote no on or edit this report. None of us are really surprised by the outcome of the meetings of the PRRC. Rafaela Varela referenced the city of Troy's history of violence toward our minority communities, individuals, and businesses, hiring judges with convictions of racism and violence behind them. And this report is consistent with the historical violence and violation of trust of our community. There's been so much violence and trauma in our community that our white residents have been able to ignore. Luz Benbow spoke of our Troy heritage of abolition, and our city of Troy is in a horrific violation of this heritage. Black Lives Matter. So I'm here to speak up and amplify the voices of those people who spoke up and spoke out in February over and over in the committee meetings as community members and affinity group members with personal and family experiences of police abuse and racial bias. The evidence provided by these members over and over was rejected by the committee as evidenced by this report. In fact, in these meetings, we heard the police chief Owens reject systemic racism within the department. Well, we have right now a Black police officer suing the police department for the racist work environment. Given that the Executive Order 203 affirms that Black Lives Matter and mandated a review of the, and I quote, police department's policies, procedures, makeup, and to commit to addressing racial bias and inequity in policing practices, particularly in Black and Brown communities, it is impossible to deny racial bias and inequity and fulfill the mandates of this executive order. This report came from a last-minute process that gaslit and continues to gaslight these essential community members and affinity group members. They were volunteers who spent hours preparing and spent their time in front of the committee and then got ignored. The meeting leadership has apparently refused to review the police department policies, procedure, and makeup because they're denying racial bias and inequity, despite these hours of evidence. Out of that committee process, during which the mandates were ignored and the recommendations of the community and affinity groups were ignored, the report's 15 recommendations do not even claim to review these policies, procedures, makeup, or commit to addressing racial bias and inequity. The report doesn't use the language of racial bias, inequity, and racism, doesn't name that Black Lives Matter, doesn't acknowledge that we currently are faced with evidence of systemic racism, and first and foremost, doesn't even address the conduct of the police. I hear that the city council president and the mayor are claiming to build trust and transparency. Claiming to build trust is a PR claim. This report is designed with intention to be an abject failure of the executive order because you're rejecting the evidence presented to you to build community trust. You've rejected the need for change in the police department, which means that nothing will change. The community members see that their elected officials are brick walls, that the process is rigged against them, and that it doesn't matter how many times they speak up. How do you expect the community to trust you when you provide no transparency and community members' requests and voices are shut down? The space of the meetings in February showed us that the community knows what's helpful. They spoke up, they spoke out, they talked about their histories of violence, they exposed all of their frailties and realities. And the city seems to have no intention to act. If the city of Troy can't even say that Black Lives Matter, this report is violence and it's a dismissal of our neighbors in our community.
So, just so you know, you have about 40 seconds.
I'll be done in time.
Thank you.
This report does not reflect the intention to act. This report is a joke. It's performative PR speak and deflection. We trust that based on this report, the city of Troy will keep doing exactly what it's been doing, which is nothing. Your actions speak loudly. This report is an insult to those volunteer community members who spent time and energy hoping that they would be heard. Our city council, you, who I'm speaking to tonight, must reject or edit this report. Go back, look at those voices, hear them, look at the presentations and the evidence from our community members and the affinity group members that you claim to want to hear from. They told you everything. I trust that you will go back and address the most important parts, address the racial bias, and address the inequities in policing our communities. And I know that this is hard and painful work. Thank you for the time.
Thank you, Silva. Thank you for joining us. Thanks. Okay, next on our list, Mara.
Tashika Medina.
Thank you for joining us. You're with the Troy City Council Finance Committee.
Hi, hello. Can you hear me?
Very slightly, very, very low.
I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
We can hear you, but it's echoing a little.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Well, I'm going to come respectfully in a
disrespectful.
Great. Awesome. I'm going to come respectfully in a disrespectful manner because this document, oh my God, it's so disrespectful to me as a person of color, to my community, to the city of Troy. Do you understand that a good part of your community is 75 to 80% BIPOC? You understand? So I'm going to come in the voices of those people. We can never trust the city of Troy. The city of Troy over the years have been so harmful and disrespectful and downright retaliatory against people that speak up against the systematic injustices in the city of Troy. Me being one of them, ma'am. And my name is Tashika Medina, and I am the founder of Equality for Troy. My son, Tajay Sanders, has been repeatedly targeted and beat on by Officer Kyle Jones. Kyle Jones is one of the officers that come to my hood, and beat on my Black kids. And I done seen it on a day-to-day basis. And Kim Ashman Pearson, I done spoke to you about it, just like I done spoke to you about Grace Baptist Church and a couple of other things that goes on in this community. Because what you guys fail to understand is that you need to include the Black voice in order to represent the Black voice, meaning you need, Kim, if you represent District 2, you need to hit the ground and understand. If you represent District 4, you need to understand to hit the ground and understand why people, I'm sorry, my son, I have a 3-year-old and he's having like a attack.
It's
right
okay.
now. Sorry.
It's okay. It's okay.
Is he okay?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so sorry. I'm gonna go upstairs.
About it.
But I want this to be understood because my thing is I have witnessed harm by Troy PD. I have been harmed by the Troy PD, specifically Kyle Jones. This document, this PPRC whole thing in itself has harmed me because to be behind a movement and to stand behind a movement and have so many people support you, and then you don't have your own constituents that you voted for, because I did vote for you, Kim, and you have people that don't stand up and don't hear you and don't want to hear you, it's harmful. And I think this is my piece of it. You have to understand that You guys don't understand a different side of the realm. You may live in your districts or wherever you live, but you don't experience what I experience, ma'am. Walking home, coming home late at night from work. I am a mother of 6 boys. Coming home from work in the dark and gotta walk from downtown where it's all lit up. It's all lit up. And then I just got to cross over Hoosick and I'm in the dark. And then I got to clutch my purse. And then I got to worry about things. You guys don't have to worry about them things. My thing is, you guys don't step out the box and understand that it's bigger than you, it's bigger than me, it's bigger than us. And then the fact that white supremacy get condoned in our own town, that our officers get to run around with goddamn, what do you call them flags? Confederate flags in their cruisers. That our own chief gets to sit there and meet with a 3%er and get photographed with a 3%er. That is a white supremacy group. I understand. I got some time. I'm going. But you guys need to understand that you need to listen to the community that you are here to represent and understand that we are angry as hell. We are angry. And the reason why we're angry is because that document in itself screams white supremacy. It does not say Black Lives Matter. Chief Owens can't even say that systematic racist injustices exist in Troy, New York. When my son got hit by a cruiser by Kyle Jones and dragged by his dreads and hit on the floor and called nigger by Kyle Jones.
Tashika, if you could please.
No, it's a problem, and you're gonna cut me off. But I put it on y'all to not pass this. Fuck, redraft it. Come in the community, get your ass on the ground, and listen to the people. Listen to us. We are crying. Y'all not helping. Put your white privilege aside. Come out your fucking ass, Kim and Montello. Put the fucking beer down and the wine down, and come listen to us, bitch. Bye.
Laura, please. Okay, who is next on our list?
That was the end of it. Several people who signed up did not actually sign in, so that is the last person to speak.
Okay. I'm okay going right into the legislation unless folks want a 2 to 3 minute potty break. Are you guys with me? Are you good going into the legislation?
I'm good.
Okay, very good. All right. Yeah. No local laws, no ordinances, and we have resolution 27. We have a resolution adopting report of the City of Troy Police Reform and Reinvention Collaborative. Council President Montello, do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Motion, Council Member Zaluski, do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Council Member Ash McPherson. On the discussion, I'm sure there'll be quite a discussion here, so take it away. Who would like to speak first? Questions, discussion? Maybe not.
Council President.
Yes, Council Member Ash McPherson.
First of all, I'd like to say thank you to all the callers that were here on tonight. One caller stood out to me, and I heard her, and that would be Deb Garrett. I heard her passion. I heard her pain. I heard her, and I thank her for coming on and speaking as the way she did. There's a lot of information that was put out there from the callers. A lot of them angry. A lot of them that I heard is all trust. I listened to the meetings that were held by the committee. I heard the trust was a big issue there. What I got out of the committee meetings was the Khalil Jameson group is going to still be working with the police and the administration, and I really like that. A lot of the callers were saying, you know, this is a first step that they don't want to hear. This was a report put together, I'm assuming, based on all the information that was heard within the committee. There's still more work that needs to be done, in my opinion. We need to work within the community, with the community. We need to build trust, and it goes both ways. I know 3 of us had tried to push for more community police officers, and I think we do need more community police officers to work within the community to help build the trust, help bridge that gap. There's many more discussions that are needed. Is this report perfect? No. Does it give all those that they wanted demanded, that they want, the demands that they wanted? No. I see more conversations and more information coming forward. I just, there's more discussions that are needed. I just, you know, I just wanted to say that. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you, Councilmember Ash McPherson. Do council members have any questions? The mayor, the chief is with us. Any further discussion, comments?
Council President,
Yes, Councilmember Gully.
I can't tell who's on here because it's new to me doing this on my phone.
I can fill you in. We have the Corporation Council, the mayor, Mara, and the chief.
I just have a question for the mayor.
Yep.
If he, Mr. Mayor, if you could just, because there was a lot of talk about this tonight, and if you could just help me out to, you know, fill in the reasons, you know, how did you select these members of the committee? What was the value of them bringing to this committee? And why was it such a late start to that process? If you could just help some of the people that were talking tonight to have that answer, I'd appreciate that.
Sure. I've tried to describe this. We included people who we thought could help make a difference. So collaborators in the community who can bring resources to bear to address the concerns that are raised. So as an example, one of the concerns that was raised early on was reentry services and the apparent lack of, not lack, I don't want to say it that way, but the insufficiency of the resources on reentry services. Now that really doesn't have anything to do with the police department, but it's part of the bigger criminal justice system. So it was an interesting conversation, and I would say inclined the DA to want to sit down with us and with some others and develop a response to that. Similarly with diversion programs, similarly with mental health and whether we can divert some of the mental health calls we experience every year to people who are not police officers, but who are trained in mental health issues. That there was a lot of excitement that was developed around that. And we had county mental health on the call, and Kathy Coons, and she's very interested in working with us to develop an alternative program so that we reduce the footprint of policing in the community, so to speak. There are some great examples of that. Some of them are as old as 30 years old that we could draw from. I don't think we should be copying them exactly, but they provide us a lot of valuable information. And then we need to find resources to, if it makes sense in our community, find resources to stand up such a program. And I think that's important because that was a concern that a lot of people raised throughout the meetings, was that even though we spend a lot of time and effort training our police officers on how to deal with emotional distress, you know, they're not the same. It's not the same as a person whose career is in that field. And so it would be great if we could shift some of that work elsewhere, and either free up our police to do other work that is more suited for police force, or assist those in the mental health field. So, you know, I included people in the community who could help us, who could help actually assess some of the suggestions that would be put forward and help us develop the programs that would address those, and potentially even make contributions to the resources that are needed to make those changes. And I think we were successful in that regard. As I said, County Mental Health and Joseph's House have expressed an interest in working with us on the mental health question. The DA's office on reentry and diversion programs, and others have stepped up with interest as well in addressing issues that the community has raised.
Mr. Mayor, in that report, I've heard many speakers here talk about the lack of addressing the issue of our Black and Brown community, whether it be in regards to the 7th Ave Park not being completed. I know the weather's just breaking, but I'm hoping that we can put some sort of urgency to that and help that become completed for that community. But I notice a lot of people here are thinking that, you know, we're not focusing enough on some of the real problems here. Do you plan on furthering out this, you know, some committee work or meetings that will help to address some of the concerns that we've heard tonight from the people that have expressed themselves?
Well, that certainly is the big question. And let me just address 7th Avenue Park. As you will recall, there was a pandemic last year that shut down factories. Materials that we needed, materials that were spec'd and bid out and designed for that park, were not produced for us. So yes, that park we had hoped to open last spring, and there were considerable delays. And it was shortly before the frost hit that we got some of the final materials in. There's nothing I could have done. There's nothing I could have done to have changed that. Those factories were shut down. So it's not for want of effort to make 7th Avenue Park available to the community. We were dealing with a pandemic. With respect to the other issues, and it's a beef I have with the whole process of the Reform and Reinvention Collaborative. We're dealing largely with symptoms here. We have what should be embarrassing disparities in our society between the minority and the majority groups. So, you know, I look at my situation in life. I compare the advantages that I had, and you know, it gave me a different starting point than people who might have grown up in North Central and are African American or Hispanic. I recognize that. There's no doubt about it. You can't really deny that when you look at metrics regarding education, wealth accumulation, access to health outcomes. You know, maternal mortality. I only know this because my daughter is an OBGYN. If you're an African-American woman pregnant in the United States of America, you have more of a chance of dying than an African-American woman who's pregnant in Somalia. I mean, you can't explain that disparity without acknowledging that there is bias within our communities. There is institutional bias. The things that cause people to become involved with the criminal justice system are many and complex. And it starts with early childhood development, and the lack of resources that are available in some communities comes from the lack of safe and affordable and stable housing. And by safe, I mean, lead poisoning, mold, things that affect kids' development, the lack of, or maybe, I'm sorry, maybe the better way to say it is under-resourced schools. I mean, there's a whole slew of things that we don't do well as a society that impact how people develop and what their chances are of succeeding in our community, and what their chances of running up against the criminal justice system are. So we do need, and it's not unique to Troy, we do need to do better as a society with respect to providing housing, providing everybody, an equal chance at succeeding, an equal chance at realizing the potential of their God-given abilities. We don't do that now. And that's the glaring problem here. And it's completely missed in this exercise. The governor is telling us to do this out of one side of his mouth, and out of the other side, they're cutting money for reentry services, and they're cutting money for diversion programs. We can't do this alone. The city of Troy is not rich enough to cure all of the ills that we are trying to deal with in our communities. We don't have the ability to put the housing dollars that are needed into our communities, or the public health dollars, or the youth programs. And I've given this example a number of times. When I started in this field back in the 80s, the city of Troy got $6 million a year from the federal government in CDBG funding. By today's dollars, that would be a little over $13 million. That was money that funded youth programs, it funded community centers, it funded all sorts. I mean, Central Little League was largely funded with that money back in the 80s. That would be $13 million today. We get less than $2 million a year today. So, if I could have that other $11 million, we could address a lot of the things that people are rightly upset about. But the government's focus has shifted from our communities. I would say that it started about 40 years ago. So I'm sorry for the long answer. I have a lot to say on that. I tried to be concise.
Mr. Mayor, I appreciate that. I realize that this report has information in it, and it's a good, I know somebody on the line said, I don't want to hear this as a starting ground, but reality is this is a starting point for us to move forward. As I said, is there a focus on continuing to reach out in the community and continue to work on these pieces moving forward? Because I think that changes of this type of magnitude in the city of Troy are going to will take time, and as you said, it's going to take finances way beyond the city. Is that something that we will be looking for and focusing on in the future to try to get some answers and get some progress?
Well, I think we have to commit to advocacy with our state and federal representatives to make sure that the funds that are necessary to support communities are reinstated or come our way when they are available. Yes, so this is the beginning of a process. I've tried to build in here, and I tried to build into the Police Objective Review Board an ongoing reporting requirement so that there is accountability. And if we find that something isn't working, we can go back in and say, well, we recommended this. Why haven't we made any progress on this? It holds our feet to the fire, but it also allows us to adapt. So if we go down a path and we find out something isn't generating the desired effect, then we either scrap it or we amend it to make it more effective at what we want the outcome to be. So recommendation 8 does provide, no, not 8, I'm sorry, let me scroll down here. The last recommendation, whatever number it is, 15, I think it does establish an oversight committee that the other groups will need to report to on a periodic basis. And we could set that up on a 4-month, a seasonal basis, every 4 months, every quarter, or every 6 months, whatever, we feel the need is. And there will be obligations to report progress to this oversight committee, and this oversight committee can make adjustments as needed. And I think, there's other ideas that aren't yet well formed that I think could be included in here that would make for an ongoing dialogue. What is recommended are the things that can get us underway. We do have to build some trust in an effort to get people to feel that dialoguing with us is a worthwhile exercise. So some of these things are intended to begin to build that trust. And eventually, I hope that we speak more freely to each other. Although people spoke pretty freely tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate the candid answers.
Thank you, Councilmember Gully. Anyone else want to talk about the report, discussion, questions?
Council President?
Yes, Councilmember Cummings.
I had sent along a couple things I wanted to make sure we were prepared to talk about. The first is if you could provide an update on the body-worn camera policy, which is noted in the report as a thing we're close to. And in particular, with regard to making sure that the footage from cameras is accessible to folks who need it. So I might.
Thank you.
There we go.
Thank you, Council.
So I'll defer to the Corp Counsel to speak about the body-worn camera policy to the extent he can, because it's not yet nailed down.
Okay, Councilmember Cummings, I'm not sure I actually heard your question. You just want?
Start with a broad update on where we're at with the body-worn camera policy.
Well, it's still under negotiation. I'm sorry to report that. I expect to be meeting with the attorney for the PVA next week. I don't have the time and date of the meeting yet, but that's what I asked to be set up. I think after that point, I'll have a pretty firm idea of exactly where this is going to go. A number of the concerns that you mentioned in your email are addressed in the policy, but I can't discuss any of the particulars while it's under negotiation. And some of them you may be satisfied with, some you will not be, but we share similar concerns where we have different outcomes, I guess.
Okay. I'll look forward to hearing more when you can, I guess.
Okay.
And then I don't know which of you should address this, but in the report, I believe it's section 4, it talks about ambiguities and clarifications needed before we can make a policy with regard to releasing disciplinary records under 50A. What do we need to get to a clear answer on that? So, any chance we could get to an answer so that we can have a more clear policy outlined in this next week, or does it need to stay sort of a IOU for future work for now?
Well, it is, I'll speak a little bit to it. It is an evolving policy to some extent. We are relying heavily on FOIL and also on the opinions of the Committee on Open Government with respect to FOIL. So when 50A was repealed, the legislature enacted new provisions in Section 87 and 89 of the Public Officers Law, and that is where we intend to be guided at least for the present.
So I know a significant quantity of FOIL requests have been submitted. where are we at with being able to actually respond to those?
We've answered a number of those requests. We've denied a number of those requests. And we have partially fulfilled some of those requests. Some of them are so broad and extraordinary in a sense that it will take multiple responses in order to respond completely to them.
Yeah, I guess that's where, certainly some communities have taken the tact of just making public information available to the public through their websites. I know you talked about a revamped police website. Are there legal blockades to doing that, or it's just we haven't set the policies up for that yet?
I don't know that there's a legal blockade. I think the city of Utica has done something along those lines. But Troy has not adopted that policy.
Okay. I think that's would probably be a good direction to go to have a little bit more certainty in that recommendation. Let's see. Oh, and then the last thing was recommendation 2 talks about the complaint form process. I've heard there's a new form and a new process and a new policy, at least under works there. Where does that stand? And I like the online and available in City Hall. Other cities I know also make it available at libraries and community organizations and other places like that. Is that something we can add to this recommendation, or are there concerns or blocks you have with that?
I can't really speak to where that is right now. I haven't been involved in drafting the complaint form. I don't see any reason it could not be put online, though.
Okay. And Mayor, do you have any follow up on that process? Or?
I think the chief has something to add to that.
Looks like it. Thanks for joining us, Chief. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, so we have a revamped compliment and complaint form. We just also had it translated into Spanish. It will be available initially as a fillable form online. But as we mentioned in part of the committee discussions, we're looking at an overall software package that will include a way to track compliments and complaints. So initially it'll be online. Obviously paper copies will be available at the station and at City Hall. In terms of public libraries or things like that, if they're willing to have a space for us to have those forms readily available, that's fine with us. And along with that revised form, we're revising and we have a draft policy. So we've broken out the complaint compliment process from the discipline process. So we'll now have 2 general orders where it was incorporated into 1. So we're still working on the final draft of each of those.
Okay. I think that's it for my nitpicking for now. I'll have more recommendations next week.
Thank you, Councilmember Cummings. Anyone else? Questions, comments?
Yeah, Council President.
Yes, please, Councilmember Zaluski.
I'm not going to spend a lot of time. I think residents, got their point across this evening. We have a week before we pass the final version of this report. I anticipate that we will pass it out of finance tonight because not passing it could, put the city in jeopardy. And then we have a week to discuss this and to make any amendments that we feel might be necessary. I guess I'd like to ask, all of us what that process might look like. How do we want to proceed with taking input that we're getting from the public and coalescing that into, the final document. Basically, the mayor has given us, the PRRC report, and now it's our report, and we've got to either pass it as is, or we've got to amend it in some fashion. Assuming that some council members might want to make amendments, I guess I just want to understand how that will look for us. Do we want to have independent caucuses? Do we want to have a meeting with the mayor? I don't think it's, certainly I don't think we're going to end up rewriting it from scratch. I mean, that's, the Mayor Madden's done, put a lot of time and effort into this report, as the entire committee spent a lot of time, with these meetings, soliciting input from the affinity groups and the community. But I anticipate that there'll be at least some changes. There's actually an email we got today from a resident just talking about the use of the word "when" in recommendation number 4, how it says when officers misbehave. And that resident was saying, well, that presupposes that officers are going to always misbehave. And we should probably say something like, if an officer misbehaves. We don't want to assume that every officer is going to misbehave. That's just word choice. And I know, Mayor Madden, I know you're concerned about word choice as well. So there may be some minor edits that we make, and there may be some additional recommendations that that council members might want to add to the report. So I guess my question is, how do we want to do that? How do we want to proceed?
Yeah, what I would like to see is maybe, not that we want, but maybe a subcommittee of, only because obviously we have a week, less than a week, to share it amongst each other and to meet, obviously, open meetings, all of that. What I'd like to see is maybe, if you want to appoint a person from the majority, a person from the minority, and then we can funnel our information through those folks and at least, form a subcommittee that can really look at this, make recommendations, and then I would say by Tuesday at the latest, only because, a day before just I don't think is fair to anyone. So maybe by Tuesday, we can firm up some of our recommendations, some of our input. I'm not sure if council members have some additions they'd like put in. I believe 1 or 2 folks do. And remember, amendments, we can also talk about it on the floor next week, but I prefer to do it, as I think all of you would, prior to doing it on the floor on Thursday. So I'm thinking maybe over the next few days, if we could put a person in charge, from the majority, from the minority, and then work with council members. And, honestly, for the mayor, we could bounce things off of the mayor and the chief, but like you said, council member Zaluski, it's on our laps now, and it's up to us if we want to amend it and where we want to amend. And honestly, if we don't have full consensus on some of the amendments, that's okay. Majority obviously is going to rule, but obviously all of our input, I think, is really important.
If I can take the floor back briefly, I think that's reasonable. In terms of open meetings law, certainly the 2 caucuses can meet on our own. So I would anticipate, I would call a Democratic caucus for our 4 members and, work through this with our caucus. I would assume you do the same with your caucus, and maybe then we meet up again next week and have a conversation about where we're at in terms of any changes, see if we can coalesce that. And if we can't reach agreement, yeah, sure, we can. It'd be like the budget process where we had our own budget recommendations, you had your own, and we went through those. But it'd be really nice if we could actually come up with something that we all agree on. I understand that the issues here are complex, and it's difficult to get 7 people to. It's difficult to get even 4 out of 7 people to agree. Never mind all 7. But let's see what we can do. The 4 of us will go back and talk through this. I assume you'll do the same, and then we'll stay in touch over the next few days. I know that a week is not a lot of time to do this, but we're up to the challenge, and we'll work through it.
Yep, I agree. And, like, as you said, we're not going maybe to agree on everything, but, I think this has a really good foundation. Councilmember Steele, did you want to say something?
Yes, thank you.
I'm sorry, Councilmember Zaluski, are you finished?
Yeah, I think that's what I want to say.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Steele?
Yeah, I want to sort of echo thanks to all those who spoke tonight. and to all who spoke earlier today at the Speak Out, and to the various affinity groups who spoke to the PRRC. I was part of one of the groups. I listened to all of the PRRC's sessions. I'm frustrated and disappointed, and could say so much more. But I think the voices tonight have said a lot of how I'm feeling. I'm regretful that we are stuck with something, a document that looks like this, with such a short time frame to consider. I'll take you back to our resolution, which was an outgrowth of the June rally and the executive order. We formed a work group, and folks didn't want a work group. We don't need a work group. We've got enough work groups. How many work groups are being formed in this report tonight? I'm upset because I think a lot of time has been invested by a lot of citizens in this process, and I don't think they were heard. And I think we heard that frustration tonight. I want to commend the members of our Reimagine work group. And if this passes and all of these other work groups are formed, I hope those folks are considered as members. We had what we thought was going to be our last meeting last night to wrap up our work, and the bond that was formed by a retired Black policeman to a young Black Lives Matter or Troy for Black Lives member. They don't want to stop meeting. They don't want to stop talking. We can have community if we listen to each other and we talk to each other and we respect each other and we care and we do the work. Let's not kick the can down the road again. I've heard that phrase before, and I'm seeing it tonight. That's what we have in front of us. The whole process was kicked down the can, and now it's in our lap. There's no way we're going to be able to make people happy in the short amount of time, because clearly we're going to lose state funding if we don't pass it by April 1st. So we're going to end up with a report that probably none of us are happy with. But I hope it will be the continuation. I'm not going to say the beginning, the continuation of a process that many people in our community have been working on for years, and they should be recognized for that. And they should be acknowledged for that. And we should thank them from the bottom of our hearts. And none of us on this screen know what they live daily, day in, day out. And it's not just in the police department, it's in the schools, it's in every segment of our community. And if we're not willing to accept it, then we've got a problem. And I'm going to end with this is an analogy that I used. I tried to draft a number of reports and the group didn't like my tone, which I respect. But I said, an alcoholic cannot seek help until they recognize that they have a problem. And we cannot, in Troy, get help and be helped if we do not recognize that we have a problem, that we have racism in every facet of our community. And I've been on my soapbox long enough, but I hope you understand that I've been inspired by the passions of the group and the people that I've been working with since November. And I guess I'm going to continue working with them because they want to stay together and they want to make change. And I hope we'll have a chance to do that in Troy.
Thank you, Councilmember Steele. Further discussion, questions? I had a question, Mayor, I know we've talked, a lot about the PRRC and the makeup of the PRRC. And I'm just curious, what was the feedback from the majority of the PRRC, after sending the report and hearing from them overall?
I didn't hear back from everybody, but I didn't receive complaints. I received good comments on it, but I don't know that that's indicative of how everybody feels. So I wouldn't project that on the entire group.
Right. Okay. I was just curious. Yeah, I saw a couple emails and a couple comments after the report was delivered, but yeah, I was just curious of that. And listen, this we all have passion, and somebody mentioned earlier, don't say one Troy. I'm going to say one Troy because I know we can be one Troy. I know we can. I was born and raised in North Central, and my dad was a cop at the time, and we formed a lot of bonds, and we still have bonds from North Central from growing up there. I think we arrived at this point, from a moment in a national tragedy, and we brought it down to a local conversation. As the mayor said earlier, what I've seen, I was on the council in my 20s, late 20s, and I've seen it in my 30 years, well, less than 25 years in government, just the decimation in terms of funding to municipalities from the federal government for youth services, for housing. And the mayor and I don't always see eye to eye. A lot of folks out there know that, but we joined together on this effort and stating that we do need more youth services. Everybody knows that. We do need more mental health services. We need more social services, more affordable housing. City of Troy is not going to do this alone. What we are seeing is bigger than us. But can we make change? Can we do better? Do we have to do better? Absolutely. I want to thank the PRRC committee. As a member of that committee, we listened. I learned every minute of every hour, and believe me, there were easily 25 hours, if not more, put into this committee. People were away from their families. This committee was not a sham, as some people like to say. These were really hardworking folks volunteering and really giving their time. In the affinity groups, I gotta tell you, we listened. It did not go on deaf ears, as Councilmember Steele just stated. I look at this as a work plan. This is not the end. This is a work plan, You already heard Brian Owens, our chief, talk about a new complaint form. You've already heard things that are in this report that are moving forward. Two of the things that really stood out with me, the mental health crisis outreach and the EDRPT training, that's huge. I know that Renee Powell and a number of folks really keyed in on this, because our police force is not what it was when my dad was on the police force. Of course, it was simpler times then, and he walked the beat. But saying that, our police force has changed over the years. We have to change, and we have to somehow reform our police force in terms of those mental health calls, in terms of those social calls. So how can we do that? I believe that this crisis outreach team is a step in that direction. And I'll tell you, I think we have a second to none police department. I know we do. They're seeing rough times right now. Their morale, I think, is being hit. But more importantly, some of obviously the latest events with MJ and the gun violence we're seeing in our neighborhoods, and you heard it tonight from Sam Chapone. So we have to somehow relieve our officers from some of these mental health calls. Look in the report, the mayor actually alluded to it, 1,000 calls, 900 to 1,000 calls just last year. So we have to somehow improve this. But saying that, can this document be better? Sure it can. But that's, even if we make it better next Thursday, that's not going to be the final document. That's going to be a working document. So what I would ask my colleagues, let's put the time, obviously, but let's not try to make it perfect. It's not going to be perfect, because I view it as a working document that's going to bring us into the future, hopefully live longer than even us. But we do have an opportunity to do better. I know we can do better. And you know what? I'm going to keep saying it. I know we can be one Troy. I know we can take down those borders. I believe in Troy. And like I said in my legislative address, little boy asked me, why do you stay in Troy? Because of the people. And we heard from 25 people tonight. Some people were really, upset. Some people were really passionate. But guess what? At the end of the day, we are going to be one Troy. So saying that, and just lastly, I just want to say Fred Miller. I have incredible respect, and I am just so psyched that he has offered his services pro bono to us. I just have incredible respect for Fred. He is a Troy resident, and for Khalil Jameson, who is nationally renowned for these types of efforts. We are so fortunate. So thank you, Mayor, because I know you had to do a little persuasion, I'm sure there, but I'm sure Fred jumped to the task, but at the same time, I know you reached out to him. So anyway, saying that, if anyone else wants to say anything or ask any questions, please. Okay, we'll get to the resolution then. All right. Bear with me. Sorry, my computer signed off.
You do already have a motion and a second.
Yep. So further discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, resolution 27 carries 7-0. We're going to meet with our caucuses. We'll be talking over the next several days, and stay tuned. And don't forget, next week we do have a 6:45 public hearing on CDBG, and then the 7 o'clock regular meeting. Okay, so I'll take a motion to adjourn.
All right, motion to adjourn.
Motion, council members, Lucy, do I have a second?
I second.
Second, Councilmember Ash McPherson, discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Good night, everyone.